Good afternoon.
No, the coaster. Please.
Call the meeting to order. I see that since we don't have the video today because the video operators were unavailable, we will have a tape of the meeting. All four commissioners are present, and since we all know each other, I don't think we need to go through the usual introductions that we do in the video. The first item of business is the Board of Canvassers to amend the certification of election results for the November 6, 2012 general election. It's my understanding that these are being amended because the New York City Board of Elections discovered additional ballots recently and recorded those ballots and have forwarded us an amended certification to New York City.
So
I think that's playing, not recording.
This one's...
No, that one's fine.
Do we decide if they have a runoff, or is that their decision, New York City? That's something I'm not sure.
We have nothing to do with that. We don't have anything
No,
to do with
okay.
it.
I should have known that, but I wasn't sure. That's what I thought.
So those in favor of the amended certification, say aye.
Aye.
We've circulated the paperwork, and Anna, you will make sure that the National Archives gets it as well as the Secretary of State.
Yes, sir.
So that the historic returns for President are as accurate as possible.
They report to us every time we do that, that unless we get the governor to amend the certificate of ascertainment, they won't do anything with it, but we...
Well, then we should send it to the governor.
I think that would be the proper thing to do.
All right, so that concludes the business before the Board of Canvassers, and we'll now commence the regular meeting of the Commissioners. The first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of July 29th, 2013.
So moved.
Those in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are adopted. We'll have the unit updates. We'll start with our co-executive directors, Bob Brehm and Todd Valentine.
Sure. I think there are a few items to go over from our written report and a few probably we can add. We, staff of the agency met with representatives of the Department of Health for that were responsible for the setting up of the agency's health benefit exchange program to generally discuss what implication it may have for NVRA, and which is pretty much our ministerial role of training people, signing numbers, tracking, and coordinating with people to set up the program. The Department of Health is already a covered agency, so there's already an NVRA designated coordinator. So on July 31st, we met a number of people in the room here with representatives of the Department of Health. They generally told us what they were thinking about doing, but pretty much said they'd get back to us with a plan so that we could review it. We have not yet heard back from them. As far as if there are any changes that we need to make from what we already, with the services we already provide, the numbers, the sites, etc. So we did reach out to them to set up that meeting because we were reading in the paper and other places that they were heading down that path, just to make sure that we were doing everything we needed to do as an agency to carry our responsibility as an agency. So we think we at least met that due diligence by meeting with them, talking to them, but I think I don't know of anything more that we need to do until we hear from them, review their plan. But certainly if there's training involved or resources, we said we'd review them and provide the appropriate response. at the present time, I think it's still in their hand to give us their plan and where we need to provide any additional services. We've had, in the material, the conversations we've had with the county boards of elections for our monthly conference calls. I think they're very helpful for our perspective and the commissioners and the officers of the association. Monthly, Todd and I have a call with the officers the day before to review agenda items, what we bring to the table, what they would like, the questions they're hearing that we could help to clarify, and then we put them on the next day's agenda and have a conversation with all of the counties. One item that we talked about in addition to the one chapter law, there were only 2 election law chapters this year. The one was the ability to use the levers in the city of New York, and then the second one was, I think, signed the day of our last call. And we brought to everyone's attention that the update of the canvass procedures had just been sent to the governor, I think the day before our last call. And apparently now that we actually have a copy of the chapter, it was signed that day. So we forwarded that information to the counties, the draft of the bill, and we followed up with everybody when we had noticed that the governor signed it, because the effective date means that the changes are allowed at the November general election. So we wanted to make sure that all the counties had a copy of it, knew it was the effective date, and then we followed up about a week later with a summary of the provisions of the statute, so that we made sure all the counties had that information. And most of the changes are authorize the county boards to change their procedures. The only one that I think is different, it requires that they post election results on the website. And from our surveys that operations have done, it's really a small number of counties that hadn't done that. 5 or 6. A big one is New York City. But we spoke with Dawn and Pam at the city level, and they indicated that they thought they could not get it done for the primary or the runoff because of the work they were doing, but they didn't think it would be a problem to get it done for the general election. So we've sent it out to people, and we continue to provide whatever answers we need to. We're also, there's a requirement that they give us a copy of those results. We're one of the few states, if not the only state, that really has no results on election night. So we are working with Dave and our team to come up with, using this year's state propositions as a test, what can we do to set up using that set of information, so going into the future, if the information comes to us, can we have aggregated results for the state offices at our office, and then, assuming we learn to crawl before we walk, and then we can provide a more expansive service if that's necessary. We'd like to be able to provide some system of results for the unofficial results that allow us to know especially across counties, who won in these races that go beyond a county. So we're working on that, and hopefully we'll be positive. I think some of the other items are distribution work that we're doing. Others.
Yeah, and we continue to cooperate with the Moreland Commission for the documents that they've sent. They've scheduled public hearings for originally the 17th, 18th, and 24th, and we inquired if we would be testifying at that, and they told us no, that they would be scheduling another hearing to deal with the board issues sometime in October, although we're still trying to confirm if we're not the subject for the 17th and the 24th, then what is, and we still haven't gotten an answer to that. We've asked again as late as yesterday. So we're certainly going to go down to the hearing to hear the testimony. We're not sure that it'll be webcast, because we'd like to know what's going on. So there'll be a number of us that drive down. The one on the 18th was originally in Buffalo, but I understand that that's been postponed. The 17th is in New York City at Pace University, and then the 24th hearing is up here in Albany in Loudonville at the crossings. So they're all in the evening. So that's where we're going with that.
I had one question, which was the status of the calendar for the congressional primary. I understand that the draft was circulated 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I really do think that we should be finalizing that calendar very soon, so that we can get court approval and get the and make the public aware. And I think it's also important that we just keep the issue of the calendar in the public eye, because if the legislature is going to move the date of the primary in 2014, they really should do it in the first week or two of January, because petitioning should start in the first week of March if it's not moved. And I think that we do a disservice by delaying the publication of the calendar. So I would, if there are any comments on why it isn't ready yet, I'd be interested to hear them, but certainly I think that the commissioners should be talking about whatever substantive issues there are so that we can adopt the calendar and make the motion to Judge Sharp.
We're looking at it.
All right, well, I'm going to put it on the agenda for the next meeting. So let's just say, that if there are issues, let's bring them to a head and talk about them publicly. I'm not aware of any issues or any reason why we shouldn't be adopting the calendar now. And
Todd, is there a deadline that you're given for that, a specific deadline?
No, there's no deadline. There is no deadline. And we
No, I
should
just
adopt the
wanted to
calendar
know.
before the process starts, obviously, but.
well, I think as I say, I think it's in the public interest that we lay it out now so that everybody knows what the rules will be, and to the extent that there is any public pressure to change the dates of the 2014 primary, that the discussion should be ongoing now so that it's done in a timely manner for proper election.
It's a big year.
Well, by court order, the date is the 4th week in June, unless, in the even year, unless and until
Right, but
the legislature adopts something that is compliant, so.
But we have to have a petition, a schedule of all the intermediate dates, and I guess we're not technically bound by the statute, although the draft proposal that we circulated would generally adhere to all of the standard dates, I think, with the exception of the independent nominating petitions.
There's we supersede the same area, we recommend superseding in the draft that we did in the 2012. The only thing we added, and I know I talked with Todd about just generally putting in there, was the independent petition. We didn't move that last time, and it was a big pressure on us to get that done so that you had a chance to make a determination so we could certify the federal, independent candidates by that deadline, several days after the primary in September. And there's just not a lot of time between when it's filed, when they can object, how they can object. If you're objecting to a petition with 3,000-4,000 signatures, that's usually a long work for the staff, and it just didn't work. So I know I think that's the area that we modify the approach, and that we need to do something differently. The other thing that is a change is when we did the 2012 calendar that we had to give to the court, we didn't have congressional lines early, so everything was kind of chopped as to fewer days, fewer signatures. So we just went back to the normal number of days, the normal number of signatures, so it adjusts the calendar, assuming it means you got to start earlier. So that's the start. I don't think there are a lot of new concepts in there other than keep what we did last time, but there are adjustments because we don't have redistricting this year. But that was the draft. So the significant change would be, we would take congressional independent out of the queue and then leave the regular state local in its normal calendar. We don't recommend touching that one.
It's going to be busy here next year.
All right, well, it's not on the agenda for today, but I did want to raise it because
It's
just
important to raise.
want to make sure the commissioners have it on the radar screen, because I do hope that we'll be ready to have a substantive discussion on it at the next meeting. All right,
I
any?
don't know if I have a radar screen.
We'll fix your laptop.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So is there anything else for Todd or Bob? Then we'll turn to council. Kim Galvin.
Thank you, Commissioner. Paul and I have been answering a variety of calls on almost every issue, but it's really been the routine work of the unit. We participated in the Moreland Committee discussions and the other discussions and calls with counties, but there's really nothing significant to add to the written report.
That's okay. All right, any questions? Election operations, Dennis Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Commissioner. We too have been busy with the routine work of pre-election tasking, so that's been maintained. Bob Warren and his team helping boards build ballots, et cetera, and the rest of us fielding phone calls on any number of topics associated with the primary and also with the independent petition filing period. We did have one independent petition that was filed. It's on the prima facie report that Special Counsel has for you later on the agenda. We have processed delegate and alternate delegate information from the county boards, as well as that which was filed here, for the purposes of creating roll calls for the upcoming judicial district conventions. Those will be held this month, between the 17th and the 23rd of September. So we've provided those roll calls to conveners. Where we don't have conveners, we've provided them to party leaders, et cetera. We are waiting for results of primaries for some of those delegate and alternate delegate positions, so that those party calls can be completed where there were primaries, or amended. Hopefully that won't be required, but in any event, we're prepared to do that. We are doing the same thing with information concerning Republican state committee seats that have been sought through the petition process, so that we can provide that roll call to Todd and his team for their reorganizational meeting. We are conducting acceptance testing in county boards around the state that have purchased the Dominion Central Count voting system. And part of that acceptance testing is a bit of orientation on how to use the system. It's pretty easy, but hopefully the information Dominion leaves with the county board and the information that our team leaves with them will help them out, and we're always available if we need to. Part of that acceptance testing is sharing the audit procedures with them to make sure that they understand that the post-election audit is, that it pertains also to central count systems and not just election day systems. So the counties have been receptive to that. We're not getting any pushback on that issue. We did have a de minimis voting system update. Our rules require that we advise you of that. We determined, we were advised by Dominion that a third-party software that's responsible for capturing the ballot images in the central count system was upgraded, so we conducted functional testing, provided the results of that to our lab, and they determined it was de minimis. And again, we're just required to tell you, and it does not affect the voting system at all. So that issue has been addressed. That upgrade has been dealt with. We still can't have a lot of conversation concerning the vendor responses to the RFP because that procurement is still open, but we have no new vendors responding to the RFP. The two existing vendors have, so they are in conversation with OGS at this point to clarify some items in their proposals And we should be getting some closure to that and some negotiation dates set up for new contracts. As soon as OGS is done doing whatever it is OGS does. Listing of Supreme Court vacancies to be filled at the general election was amended again. There was a retirement in the 10th JD, so we submitted that to Nassau and Suffolk so that they have a current list of vacancies. We've completed our reports for the EAC on the 2 grants that we were provided. The grants concerned pre-election testing and post-election audit processes. We have, we'll be providing those to the EAC. We'll make them available on to John and Tom for posting on our website. We're happy to share copies with anybody who wants one. We have a couple of DVDs. One is a training DVD that we created using the grant program for the creation of test decks. And we also have an orientation DVD that was created by Clear Ballot, who was the group that we worked with on responding to the grant. The title of the grant that we were awarded was How to Do a Cost-Effective and Efficient Post-Election Audit. So that was the topic of our report, and the DVD complements that. So we're pretty pleased with the results of that, I think. We may have some conversation at some point concerning the feasibility of conducting or adding automation or machine-assisted audit capabilities to our statute and our regulations, but we're not prepared for that conversation yet. We're happy to have the conversation, but we don't have anything to bring to you for that purpose, but that would be the next step as a result of that grant and the information that we collected. Again, we provided those amendments from New York City. It was, we're working with New York City to try and figure out what exactly goes on there and why we keep having these issues. We had a very pleasant conversation with them on the phone, with their new executive director and their executive team, and they're amenable to us going down and having some conversation. Their conversations have been very candid. They've sent a number of procedures for us to look at. They're lengthy. They're 10-point font. There's a lot of work there to get through, but that's certainly our next project, is to become familiar with their procedures. They seem open to suggestions on reviewing those and perhaps even amending them. So that was, I thought that phone call was very good. A number of us were on that conference call, and it was very positive.
You know, Anna, if they need more employees, which I think they do, we should back them up on that after you've examined everything. I don't want to talk over your head, but they certainly are in need of assistance. They are, you know, not brains. They've got the brains. They need the bodies.
Well, I think they need a little bit of everything, but we're,
Yeah.
you know, they seem open to having that conversation.
They
and,
are.
You know, we've always got a bright idea. Whether anybody agrees with us or not's another story, but we're happy to share those
I only
ideas.
worked with the Brooklyn board for years, and they were wonderful, just wonderful. But never in my lifetime have I seen them have enough personnel. It always was, well, you know, the sewers and need more people. The schools need more people. Everybody else needs more people. So they're at the bottom of the list, really, to be thought of. And if that comes out of, you know, all of your work with them, I certainly would be willing to sign a letter to the governor and to the mayor, letting them know that I think that these boards need more help.
Well, as long as the mayor signs a letter that says we need more help, we'd be all set.
Yeah, but I mean, they've been neglected for a long time. And, they've been getting more new voters, people who are very new to the system, people who speak very poor, broken English for the most part. And sometimes one person can come into one of those boards in the city and spend 2 or 3 people helping them for like 4 hours. So, I mean, people don't understand the grasp of the, you know, needs that they have.
Duly noted.
I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right.
I'm butt in.
Thank you, though, I appreciate that. We do have an issue that I didn't put in the report. We've been having conversation with a couple of our boards concerning postmarks. There are some new stamps that you can buy at the post office that the post office does not cancel. This is a problem for absentee applications, it's a problem for absentee ballots, it's a problem for people who get to the post office and have to postmark something before midnight, whether it's a petition or an authorization
Yeah, it's bad.
or an acceptance.
your
It's
taxes.
primarily,
Your taxes.
good point, thank you. See, I got a one-trick mind, it's all about elections, but you're right.
See, we don't have to worry anymore.
Oh, we have to worry more, because they're gonna charge you a penalty.
Yeah, we've been in touch with, Monroe County is working through Louis Slaughter's office, and we've been talking to people from the post office here. We've had some conversation with Doug Lewis at the Election Center to see if there's some national concern. I would think there is, because it seems to be primarily with these stamps that you can buy in the post office when you're running in and it's closed, that you buy in a vending machine. They seem very concerned about putting the date on that you buy the stamp, but not about canceling it. Somehow there's some kind of ink on there that their computer will read that tells them what they need to know, but they pretty much don't care who else needs to know about it. And they've been very dismissive about the fact that our statute relies so heavily on postmarks and has for
Yeah,
quite some time.
Very dismissive, like we aren't going to change it. Dismissive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Get over it.
That's
on-
not the latest.
On
word.
primary
Yeah.
day, we did hear, we heard from a number of people, mostly it started with Monroe County, and when Monroe County reached out to us, Anna tried to talk to the local post office. And we have some experience in the modern day post office, is also struggling with their fiscal challenges. It's very hard to talk to a live person at the post office. So that's why the Monroe County Board talked to their congressional representative, because they're usually, the federal government is more responsive to their federal reps than they are to anybody else. So while we went our path, they went their path. And that's what generally got the initial response from the post office. This is, the cancellation mark on a piece of mail was never put there to help anybody other than the post office. The fact that we all have developed policies and procedures and basically relied on that function of the federal government to put into statute things was of no consequence to them. And so they're on their way. So I put a call into Doug Lewis, who is with the Election Center in ASAD, and we're a member state, and just a couple of things. Are we the last people to hear about this post office issue, or have you heard about it? And he said, no, this is news to me. He said, we have some contacts at the central office of the post office that we always go to on election-related matters. Let me try them. And he did. And on Election Day, we heard back from him that he received a response from the group that they acknowledge this type of stamp is not part of the process to get a cancellation. There was no short-term solution other than people using these stamps that rely on a cancellation should get in line at the post office and they'll still hand cancel it for them. Then why am I buying through a vending machine a stamp? And that they are looking at where they might be able to make a change in their procedure to add this class of stamps to getting in cancellation. So I thought that was more positive. The question is,
They're changing.
will they really do it? How long does it take them to do it? And what do we do in the meantime? And there are more and more counties that are starting to see this issue because, especially now as it's post-election, post-primary day, there very well may be returned absentee ballots with no cancellation, so you don't know what day it entered the stream. The only date that those stamps print on them, when you buy them, is the month and the year. There's not even a day. So that you can see with the naked eye. I mean, there's a 3-digit barcode and God knows what for phosphorescent ink they put on it that they know how to use. So it's a concern of us, but I'm happy that at least Doug Lewis, reached out on our behalf, and it continues to reach out. We shared the information on primary day that, well, we at least, it's no longer a no, and the question is, will they really do it, and then when, and what do we do in the meantime? The alternative, if it's always a no, it's a serious issue for us to deal with, because it's all the ballot access issues by mail.
That'll look at
and it's all of the,
Yeah, we'd have to look at changing.
it's all, and more of consequence, you know, voter registration deadlines, absentee application deadlines, and the ballot, will they count or not?
And there are places I live in Bay Ridge, and I'll tell you, you go into the post office to get it. I mean, you know you're gonna be in there an hour before you get out. And I can see, a lot of people are wanting to take advantage of just mailing their ballot.
I realize at this point it's an impossible question to answer, but the possibility looms out there for mail to be coming in that needs to be registered at a certain date and time in order to meet the requirements for voting. And it will happen, very possibly. Someone must be preparing legally, how are you going to handle this? Are we going to find these people not voting properly? or
Well, you
not
could
being
modify it to make
eligible?
it a receipt date as opposed to a postmark date.
Right.
And there are legislative
Right now, I
solutions.
think our rules are pretty clear. I mean, I
Right.
think the laws and case law is very clear.
Right.
If there's no postmark and it's received after the date, then it's invalid.
But if you have
So a lot of
postmark-
voters are potentially going to lose their votes. But, I mean, that has happened in the past. There have been absentee ballots that have come in without a legible postmark.
It's tough to differentiate also when you get a certain number of days away from the primary to ensure that it was mailed prior to the election. So there's a front-end concern as well. It's a problem.
And you can bet it'll be an election that's extremely close, and many ballots that
Maybe
come in
even for
will be
federal
okay.
office, you never
Maybe
know.
even the mayor of New York City.
So.
New York is one of the few states that will count absentee ballots that are mailed before the deadline but received after the deadline. Most states just have receipt deadlines. And it's interesting that a number of states have been talking about copying the New York rule. And California is the most significant, where there's legislation pending to allow vote-by-mail ballots that are postmarked before the election. So,
And I think in like Brooklyn, the Bronx,
So,
Manhattan,
it'll be interesting.
the mail doesn't move as fast. I don't think the mail moves as fast.
No, it's not all stamps, it's these special
Yeah.
stamps with the three-digit barcode. So if you
Yeah.
use what looked like a normal stamp, I know we don't lick them anymore, but what looked like a stamp you used to lick, peel and stick on it, those are still in the queue to get canceled. It's this-
Or newer stamps
Right.
that don't have
But
this
there has always
phosphorus on
been
them.
there
Yes.
has always been
There's
some
always been some.
illegible cancellations or the lack of cancellations.
And we've dealt with those, there haven't been that many, but now it's potentially on a larger scale and affects a lot more people.
Well, the date on the ballot, when you open it up, is also,
It's not
A
unusual
petition.
for local elections for
unless we
someone to
decided
leave by
that's
one
what,
vote.
that's the date
Right.
we're gonna
Not
go by,
unusual
no
at
matter
all.
what, is the date on the
We have
ballot.
one in Troy right now with a one-vote difference.
Wow.
So, you know, it
there's
started
no
with the
barcode.
deadline to register before the primary, where they had 18 with this type of stamp on it. And they tried everything. The post office, can you tell me, is there any fancy little code
Yeah,
that
that's what
is,
you're
that is barcode thing here? Is there a date in here? And they said, no, that's what mail site it came to, and this is when it goes to. That's what we need. So there was nothing about that
That could be helpful.
that we could get for county boards that would allow them to read it. So, you know, we're reaching out to people, and again, I appreciate, so far, any of the other groups, the post office was not responsive, but Doug Lewis got us into the right people at least, because that's the only group that hasn't said no. Everybody else was just no. So it's hopeful.
But you're
because
right, how
it's the
long will
main-
it take?
Well, it could be a year and a, you know, in a good day. It
We're
could be,
moving
we
in-
agree to do it, now we need money, I don't know what the
Yeah,
issues
we're moving
are.
into a big season.
Yeah, so, it's out there.
I had a couple of other issues to raise with Anna. So, on the EAC grant reports on pre-election testing and post-election audits, I take it those reports are now public.
We haven't sent them to the EAC yet, we're packaging them up today.
All right, so I would like to know when they become public. Obviously, the EAC should get them before we make them public.
Right.
But, you know, please let me know, because there are a number of people who are interested in them, and I have not shared the drafts with anybody. So I'd like to do that. And John and Tom, it would be helpful to get them posted, because there is some national interest in the reports, because people have been following what New York and Florida have been doing with machine-assisted audits, and as I say, there's a high level of interest among election administration geeks on that subject. So if you could get them posted promptly once they're public and let me know the links.
Sure.
I'd like to distribute them. All right, next, New York City election procedures. Anna, I have been asking for months to get a comprehensive set of the current New York City election procedures, and I will, publicly state my annoyance that I have still not yet received them, notwithstanding the election law provisions that basically mandate that the city provide those procedures to us. And your comments about the phone call struck an optimistic tone where I am very annoyed that I have not been able to get those procedures yet.
I have requested procedures a number of times. I have not been provided with I don't want to use the word I and get into more trouble, but we've asked for these procedures. We were provided with the procedures that were sent for pre-clearance back in 2010 that were useless. The chief clerk in the Manhattan borough, Greg Lehrman, provided canvas procedures that are current relating to these issues. He broke out pages that were in specific response to questions and then provided the entire procedure. From stem to stern, we do not have a full set of current procedures from New York. We've been told they're drafting them, revising them. We have not seen those drafts. We have not been provided with final copies. So
Can
I'll
I just ask
continue to work along those lines.
a clarifying question? You mean all of their procedures, or
Yeah.
are there
Yeah.
specific procedures? I haven't been involved, so
They,
I'm gonna try to help.
yeah, the answer is yes, all of their procedures. It's roughly 1,000 pages. When I was commissioner, I had a complete set of them. They've been modifying them without providing us with copies of them. And I would like to be following along with all of the procedures.
So like whatever they
They
gave
have
Mike
them.
Ryan when he sat down at his desk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and what
okay.
they give the chief clerks, and what they give the candidate records unit, and
Okay.
I was testifying in court as an expert witness on a case dealing with petition cover sheet regulations, and notwithstanding the procedures that Anna had given me 3 weeks before my testimony, the city says, oh no, those aren't the procedures. We adopted them at the commissioners' meeting at the same time they were sending Anna the old procedures that were 10 years old. And
Yeah, many people have had the same frustration.
well, except
Well, they sent us the 10-year-old one, and that's when Anna might have brought that to my attention.
I mean, I know that a lot of people think there should be a requirement that the counties post their procedures on their website.
well, I think that's a good one, but there is a requirement in the statute that they provide the procedures to the State Board of Elections, and the State Board of Elections is instructed by the statute to provide guidance to the county boards.
I was advised
The
by...
other thing that, I'm sorry, Anna, if you want to comment on that, I just wanted to move on to the subject of their draft procedures, which is a
that's-
separate issue. One issue is the procedures. There's no question that under the statute, they must give us their procedures. It's not optional. It's not when they get around to it. They have to send us their procedures. And I think, it would be helpful to have the procedures for all of the county boards. But in New York City, where there are all these issues, and where I'm spending a lot of time trying to go over them and work on them, it's particularly important that we have the same materials that they're actually working with, and the statute requires it.
I was advised.
So I would like to get a little bit stronger on this issue to make sure that they actually comply with the law and provide us with their current
May I
procedures.
speak in their defense? Just very, I think that we're asking for them, I'm sure they have them, and we'll look at them and we'll want to make suggestions to
It is
them.
bad timing.
But I really believe that this is such a bad time because they have all these elections. Some of the counties in New York City are as big almost as states with the number of voters that they have. We shouldn't, we could put, Nevada probably up against one of them, and Brooklyn might be bigger. So we have to realize they had a tremendous amount of work there to stop and just get us something when we want it like that. And you say, they should just go to the file and take it out and put it in an envelope. I'm sure they want to look it over to make sure what they're sending us is up to date and accurate. I wouldn't be, so harsh with them at this time of year. Truthfully, we should have asked like in January.
I
when
did
it's-
ask in
I
January.
know, but
Yeah.
I don't know if we got to them in January.
Can I, with all due
They've asked
respect,
me for 3 years, practically.
with all due respect to all of you and to all of them, we've been asking for these procedures for over a year and a half. I was advised verbally on more than one occasion that they're not allowed to provide procedures to me, even if they're draft procedures, because they keep saying we're working on them to update them.
I know.
But they're not allowed to provide draft procedures to us until they've been approved by council and voted on by the board, which means we're not getting drafts and not being able to comment on them or help them out in the first place. We're getting them after the fact. But even if we got them after the fact, it wouldn't stop me from having something to say if I think there's something, or any of you, if you're looking at them.
That you want
So
to
they've been
add.
requested for quite some time. And again, I am hoping that with some new leadership there and some cohesiveness at the executive level, that maybe this policy can be revisited and they can share more in a more collegial way, and we won't have these issues. But I would never, ever ask a board in the middle of an election to send me something
Yeah.
that is just, late night reading for me. That's not what this is about.
Truthfully, you would think the procedures would be in a file and they could take them out and put them in an envelope.
If this was any
Evidently,
other
it's
board,
not.
that's exactly what we would say. Go to the
Yeah.
drawer, take the procedure out and send it to
Right.
us. When it's New York, they have these other internal policies that govern what they do and when they can make it available.
Absolutely.
Again, hopefully with a new management team there and a new focus, I am hopeful that things will change and will be a little more,
And I hear
have a little
them-
more relationship the same way that we do other counties. We talk to them, we talk about what they do and how they do it. We suggest changes. They either tell us to get lost, or they tell us, thank you very much, or they say, really, we'll do it that way. That
Well,
sounds good, till something else
It's a
happens.
disadvantage to other people too. They go before the board for a particular issue and they say, no, we changed our process or we
Yes.
changed our procedures, and there's no notice, there's nothing on their website. It's a widespread problem that a lot of people have expressed concern about.
They do like to act autonomously into
Well, I
work.
would like to follow up on that, and,
We did have-
I remind people that the statute specifically says that the State Board of Elections should visit the county boards, examine their procedures and records, and direct that any such procedures be modified in any manner consistent with the provisions of this chapter.
It might
So
be a hope
the
that we'll just
statute
go
gives
away.
us pretty clear authority in this area. And that, leads me to the next issue, which is their drafts, that, I would like to ask that they share their draft of the proposed canvas procedures so that we can provide comments on them in advance of their adopting, and hopefully to try to work out in advance so that there's not a public dispute over them the way it became when the city adopted the very convoluted canvas procedures that provided for cutting up the results tapes and creating really a very difficult and unnecessarily complicated procedure for their poll workers. If we can work on them in advance with them, it may be much more constructive in the long run. And so I would ask that the staff work with the new leadership at the City Board of Elections to try to get those canvass procedures done. So that we can review them in advance, and we don't have to publicly criticize them after they've been adopted, or that people dig in their heels because they've already been publicly committed to a particular way of doing things. And with deference to your remarks, Commissioner Aquila, right now is the time the city is doing the revised canvass procedures because of the new statute, and they have to be adopted in place for the November election and in time for inspector training. So literally every day that goes by before they adopt those new canvass procedures makes it more difficult to implement them in a proper manner. And I would ask that the senior staff talk with their counterparts at the New York City Board to get those drafts of the new canvass procedures, and let's hope that they can come closer to conforming what the other counties are doing to make a more efficient process for their poll workers that complies with the statute.
Can I ask you a brief question that has nothing to do with this?
One more thing.
Okay,
One more
go ahead.
thing on this.
This has nothing to do with it.
And the other thing is that the New York City Board has to provide in their post-election procedures now a process for getting the results tape not only to the press, which actually they seem to do a pretty good job of that, but now posting them on the internet. And I'm not sure how complicated that process is, but it would be helpful if we could review it and give them the necessary push to make sure that they understand that that's a requirement that's in place for November now, and if they need assistance, that what their needs are identified now, so that the right people can address them, so that this is in place for the November elections. All right,
My only was a quick question. I was surprised when I went to vote that we had leather machines. And I guess that was all through the city. I really don't know. I mean, I loved it because I liked the leather machine. It was nice and easy. But did any of us know that they were still using the leather machine?
Yes.
You probably told us.
Evelyn, the state board took the position of,
Yeah.
basically the staff and some of us
Yes.
spoke out against going to the lever machines.
Well, they had the other machines.
But ultimately, the
They purchased them.
legislature recognized that the city board has to run the elections, and that the city commissioners believed that using the levers was the
Nobody
least
was-
dangerous of all the bad options that they thought that they had.
They do seem to have a worst-case scenario down there right about now.
Well, we could.
Yeah, okay.
I
was just making a general comment
I-
about the closeness of I wasn't trying to make a statement
There's
on the
low
levers
turnout,
versus
though.
the ability to turn around.
I don't want to go back to
Yeah, I
that
don't
debate,
either.
because
I
I
don't
think we
either.
ultimately
ourselves out.
agreed that they had to run the election, and we would let them do it their way.
That's right.
But I didn't expect to see
But I do
that,
believe
no
that,
matter what.
I do believe that even in this scenario, that the recommendations that Anna had done and some of the remarks that I made would have adequately dealt with it.
I thought they could use it as a last resort. I didn't realize
Mhm.
that they could use it, And,
All right, well, thank you for listening to me again, but these are important issues that I'm trying to spend time on, and I'm very frustrated at the lack of information that's been forthcoming from the city board, that I think hampers me from doing my job and hampers us as a state board of elections from doing our job. All right, public information, John Conklin.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'll just do a couple of highlights from our written report. Lots of routine matters, phone calls into public information, a lot of questions about candidates' campaign filings and things like that at this time of year. We also have a lot of questions about the statewide ballot propositions. I neglected to put in the written report that we did actually post them in the web. They're on the home page. There's a special page devoted to all of the ballot propositions, so it's there for everybody to see the question, the abstract, and the joint resolution that was passed by the Senate and the Assembly for each constitutional amendment. We're also in the process of assembling quotes for the legal ads that we have to do for the 6 constitutional amendments. At the moment, we're somewhere between $180,000 to $200,000, but that still does not include the minority language translations that aren't completed yet, so we don't know what they're going to cost to be put in the papers yet in the areas where we have to put those. So that's going to push that up a little bit, but that's where we are at the moment for that. We did post a filing calendar memo for the possibility of a New York City runoff that Campaign Finance had drafted. We're still not sure whether that's going to be necessary or not. And then
The other is public advocate.
well, that's right. I'm sorry. That's right. The public advocate. That's correct. So, and that's about it for us.
Any questions? All right. Campaign Finance, Liz Hogan.
Thank you, Commissioner. I apologize for not having a written report in the packet. I ended up having a little hospital stay last week for a little bit, and I didn't get one written. So I just want to give you a couple of the statistics and just touch on a couple of things that we're doing. You know, as I usually do in the written report, I give you a update on the basic day-to-day work relative to intake and processing and registrations and terminations and that kind of thing. And what I will do is I will put that in a written report to be submitted into the packet. But for now, I'd like you to be aware that, you know, basically four people that we have to answer telephones in Campaign Finance relative to calls that come in, you know, about committees and filings and registrations. We're in excess of 10,000 so far this year. We have 4 people who do that. You know, these numbers are getting up there. As of right now, or as of the end of August, we had in excess of 13,600 active filers. So that number keeps rising as well. I wanted you to be aware of that. And as I said, there are some other numbers that I'm going to put in a written document to be submitted after, but they'll reflect the statistics as I get them from the units. I'd like you to know that our seminar schedule has been complete for this year. The team reached out and actually conducted educational components to representatives of 32 of the counties. We had in excess of 700 attendees. We gave out 54 CLE certificates, which Commissioner Kellner, that's always been an interest of yours. So our seminars, we offered you know, several seminars that were specifically CLE related, and you know, we got good turnout from them. And I actually was pleased at the number of counties that we were able to outreach into. They did a very good job. The audit, I just wanted you to be aware that, as I think I indicated at the last meeting, that there are a couple of audits ongoing now. Both of them are scheduled to be completed probably toward the end of October. One is the 2012 corporate overcontribution audit. You know, we've sent out the letters, you know, we're doing the follow-up calls and that kind of thing at this point. The other is the 2012 legislative overcontribution audit for that statewide election cycle. Those letters have gone out as well, and you know, we're in the process of dealing via email and phone calls with people who responded to us. Additionally, there's just a couple of matters that I'd like to just touch on that, you know, Bill can update you maybe at the next meeting on further. One is that our process server contract expired this year, and we Bill and I had been involved with OGS since January in trying to get another contract in place in time to go forward with the lawsuit for the non-filing of the July periodic. And we have selected a vendor, but we do not have a contract in place. But OGS advises that we will be able to use a purchase order for this particular lawsuit. What we've done is we've pushed our lawsuit back 2 weeks, and able to try to accommodate this ongoing, uncertainty. And as it stands now, we'll be doing it by PO, and it will be accomplished, but it'll be a little bit later than was exhibited originally on the enforcement calendar. The other thing that expires relatively quickly is the scanning process. And 5 years ago, we entered into a contract with a preferred vendor to provide us with electronic scanning of our historical documents that we had, and an ongoing basis in putting our regular documentation, because we were so overloaded with paper, into an electronic format. Basically, all our stuff is in electronic filing cabinets. So our contract with them is going to expire in February. We're working on getting a new contract in place before the expiration of that contract. There is one issue that we face just with this last scanning process through them, and maybe Dave can touch on this a little bit better, but in my technologically deficient world, basically the issue was that what they scanned for us from paper went into some kind of a version of software that our system doesn't accept. We can't, and there's no support for it. So we took the disks. We had the information, but we couldn't put it in our system. So we're working on how we're going to address that. We have, in our 5-year contract, I think we have something in the nature of about $60,000 or $65,000 left in our contract availability, and we're looking at purchasing some new software that will be supported, with the money that we have left in that contract before that expires. We're continuing to work with IT as well in developing, a new software and fixing by topic as they come up problems that we have with the software now, our current software. Staff meets with IT. I think we have like every 2 weeks there's a meeting, and if issues come up, we try to deal with something at that time to try to put a fix on something or whatever. So we're continuing to do with that. We have spent a great deal of time in complying. Staff was really put to the task to comply with the paper hard copy response to subpoena by the Moreland Commission. We had a lot of paper that had to be compiled, put together, and sent to them. And what we're working on now, and what we anticipate having a meeting with staff about on Monday, is the electronic response of all our electronic documents and emails or whatever. So we should be able to hopefully be in compliance with that section of the subpoena starting on Monday. We also have an ongoing federal lawsuit that we've been involved with, and I know you commissioners are aware of. That continues. I expect, as this is the last report that I'll give you, that Bill will update you next meeting as to what's going on with that. And I think, is there anything else that Bill?
No, I
do you think that we
no.
need to tell him?
I mean, we did cooperate, just to touch on a couple things. The New York City runoff, we worked specifically with the Campaign Finance Board to be able to accommodate the mandated runoff reports, and working with them. There's a 4-day pre-runoff and a 10-day post. We worked with them. We're going to waive the 10-day post and have that data combined into the 32-day pre-general, 11-day pre-general. We have some technological issues in the database that cause difficulties with that. So, but because of those reasons, we were able to come to an accommodation with them. On a positive note, on the process server, we were able to work with OGS to, albeit it's delayed, but an expedited process. It's going to be an MWBE contract, so I know Todd and Bob are happy that we'll be able to move a great percentage of our contracting towards the goals that the state requires on that. And we're hoping, frankly, since there's a cap on how much can be expended on that, that the purchase order of this big order to show cause would not count towards that cap. So in many ways, it may be a blessing that we'll have a larger amount of flexibility in what our costs are in the process server order to show costs. And so, but other than that, nothing.
What's the status of complying with the Commissioner's directive to do judgment collections?
It's in the process, Commissioner.
What specifically has happened since the last meeting?
We have met internally. We have identified documents that need to be formatted for our purpose in sending them out to the banks and the judgment debtor. And we have actually identified the group that we're going to send them to. So it's just a matter of getting the stuff together at this point.
And when is that going to actually
I
happen?
think that probably happens in the next week or two. Probably next week, the letters, yes.
I'm sorry, the letters?
Well, the documents that have to go to the bank and the judgment debtor, those will go next week, that process.
The restraining notice
Mhm.
with the
Mhm.
with the information speaking.
Mhm. So we're ready to proceed with that. We've got it lined up.
I noticed that there were no reports on complaints for this meeting. Does that mean we're completely current now?
I think we have about 14 open complaints at this point in time.
And-
I could
and
provide you a list if you wish.
And none from 2002?
From 2002?
I mean 2012?
I think there are maybe 2.
No, I think for 2012, I believe there are 7.
Oh, there are? How many?
Yeah, and I think through the current, most of the recent complaints would be relative to this election.
Yeah, we have received documents that aren't,
All right. Now,
that are
2
election
meetings
related.
ago, I asked that the commissioners be given a list of any of the complaints that were left open from 2012.
Oh, I didn't recall that. I'll be happy to give it to
I didn't
you.
get that list for this one, and I would ask at the next meeting.
I'll give it to you today, before you leave here.
All right, but I would like the reports, not just the list, but the reports on these 7 items that are still open from 2012.
You mean the documents themselves you'd like to see?
Like the status reports, because if you guys aren't going to do it, I've said that the commissioners themselves should sit down with the files and get them done, because they shouldn't just sit there and languish. And
Well, Commissioner, with all due respect, the enforcement unit has been swamped, especially with compliance on the Moreland Commission. It's not that we're not doing our day-to-day work. In the history that I've been here for 13 years, this is the smallest amount of complaints that we've had pending. So I would just say we understand that that's something we're interested in. We're certainly interested in it. It's not due to a lack of concern. It's just that we have other things that were more pressing at the time. So I certainly understand the board's directive that we proceed with those matters, but we're certainly not ignoring them. We are doing the daily work that we have to do, and we're working in a very constrained circumstance relative to our compliance. So we have lots to do with very few people. I mean, we understand your concern, but again, this is the smallest number we've ever had pending, and I understand your desire to get that to move along, but we're certainly not ignoring them.
good.
So I would just, I want to make that clear.
It's due to your diligence.
I appreciate that. I'm just trying to stay on top of it, to keep the pressure on, to keep the unit current and not to create a new backlog. Do we have any pending investigations at this time?
Yes, well, I'd be happy to discuss any of these. I know we're going to be going into an executive session, so I'd be happy to discuss those in greater detail. But
Okay. How many do we have pending at this time?
there would just be
I have
one.
none.
Just one. Okay. All right, well, thank you. And I want to acknowledge that this is Liz Hogan's last report to the commissioners. Liz has announced her retirement in 2 weeks, is it?
It is, 10 days, yeah.
So,
X hours, X minutes.
Got a little
So we-
countdown clock.
Or tomorrow.
So,
Yeah, in about 2 weeks.
She's not in a hurry to go.
notwithstanding
Adjourned, goodbye.
sometimes my harsh tone, I want to express my sincere appreciation for your efforts, because I know that you've worked very hard and very diligently under very trying circumstances with very limited resources. And I believe I speak for the other commissioners who can add for themselves, but I very much appreciate your tremendous contribution since you've come here. And in many ways, you have turned the unit around. You have added a number of innovations during your tenure here, and as Bill has just pointed out, notwithstanding the very limited resources and the substantial increase in the number of filers, you've brought down the backlogs. With many fewer people, you've been able to handle increased number of inquiries and continued our priorities, which is to make it as easy to file as possible so that we encourage voluntary compliance by...
Could I just add to that? Thank you so much for all that you did for us, and
Thank you,
we'll
Kristen.
miss you.
Thanks.
And I am so always proud to see a professional woman who does so well.
Thank you.
And God bless
Appreciate
you,
it.
and have a wonderful retirement.
Thank you.
I'll give my 2 cents too. When I first came here, I've been in politics since before I was old enough to vote, so I should know better. But I honestly didn't know who was Republican and who was Democrat, and I could not tell by the conversations and reports or discussions or debates that were going on around the table. I think that's a compliment to you, because a lot of the work that we were depending on, the information we were depending on, was coming from you. These complaints that come in are sometimes very complex, require a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of talent. And I'm not an attorney, so I need someone to help me interpret the law a little bit more than I may have known myself. So for me, it was fairly easy for me to come to the conclusion that you were telling me I should be coming to as a result of your investigation. And I had no debate in most cases. They were well presented, well done. And sometimes it would take a while, and you would say to that, this is just a little bit more complex. I'm not going to be able to give you that answer today or next week, maybe. And you also, I like you did it again today. We've gone through this many times, the fact that we're losing employees, and the workload continues to go up. It goes up dramatically, and you're bringing that up is not only informing us and the public of the problem that we're seeing here, but it's showing your concern for your own work unit, and that's a compliment to you and to the people who work with you and for you. I like to see that in people, and you're leaving, and you still are worried about your people and the workload going up and the number of employees going down. And I understand you've been considering this for over a year, so this isn't at the drop of the hat you decided
No.
to retire and run away.
No.
But I wish you the best of health and happiness. You're a great person to work with, a professional and a fine lady.
Thank you,
Good
Commissioner.
luck.
I appreciate it very much.
I'd like to add my 2 cents as well, and first of all, I'd like to ask your advice on how you can do it within a year to get retired. I want a copy of that plan.
It was very detailed and organized.
Could we have that procedure?
Yeah.
But you have certainly, and I've been in politics all my life, and you have, I'll echo basically what Commissioner Walsh has said too, that you've been a total professional in every sense of the word. And I found out a little bit about your background as a former prosecutor and your work with the legislature. You've had a stellar career, and you carried yourself forward in a way that makes everybody proud. And when you talk about the Republican, Democrat, or whatever, you handle, I think, every question that we had and every case that you came across in a very professional manner. I had no disagreements with some of the decisions that you have made, and I just congratulate you. You've been a delight to work with, and I wish you well in Florida.
Thank
God
you
bless
so much. Thank you very, very much. Very much appreciated.
Nothing to add to your report, Dave?
All right, Dave.
I have my instructions.
Lots to follow after
No, I
Thanks, but I don't have anything to add.
Well, Dave, in this season of, at least with lots of local elections, you have lots of volunteer treasurers, and many of them call me up complaining about our computer system. It would be helpful if you could give us a quick summary of your understanding of the deficiencies of the current campaign finance disclosure computer system, and in a broad view, what it is we're asking for funding to develop to replace it.
Sure. There's right now we have two standalone computer systems that we've put out for treasurers to use. So we have an older system that was written in the 1990s, which is what the majority of the filers are using, and then we have a system that we released at the end of last year, beginning of this year, which is a system written in this Java application. Both standalone systems, and not something that most people, everyday people at their computers are used to using. No longer do people expect to have to install large systems on their computers. They want to be able to use a web-based application that you go onto the web and everything else that you do, you file electronically over the internet. You want to be able to do that. So what we need to do is get from where we are today, where we're putting out very large programs, installing it on computers, not knowing much about those computers, but having to support those 10,000 computers that are sitting out there, all different operating systems, all different ranges of people who are able to use those systems and unable to use different components of it, not knowing what else they have installed on those computers, and not being able to really maintain what's out there. We have all that sitting out there right now, and we need to move to a system where it's service-based from our own system, so that we don't have 10,000 installations. We have one installation that somebody comes in and says, okay, I want to file my whatever report I need to file. They can go onto the website and they can file it, or they can, we can integrate with those systems if there's bigger systems out there that exist. But on a standard basis too, there's nothing is right now. We don't have a real standard out there for systems other than what we're using. So we need to get to that next, to the systems that are built for today's use, not was built in the 1990s. So that's where we are. We're just starting off on that redesign effort, because that one part of it is actual accepting of those filings, but having the infrastructure in place to then be able to report on those filings and to be able to do the kind of complicated and reports that people are asking of our data, that is that modeling that data is where we're focusing on now. How do you design a database that can respond to the kind of questions that we know we're going to get, and we do get, and that we at times can't answer. So that's where the bigger initiative is the design of this whole system, and then how do we technically how do we implement it. Those are all things that certainly have to get worked out as well. But obviously those cost money and cost effort.
We're talking about $2 million, is my understanding?
That's the number that we've been working with DOB on and trying to refine that as we can.
The biggest complaints that I hear from treasurers is that they can't just take a spreadsheet and file it. So they can't just build like an Excel spreadsheet or take something that's output from, say, Quicken and file it. And the other complaint is that, and I don't know whether it's accurate or not because I haven't been a treasurer in a long time now, that if they make a mistake in the middle of preparing the report under the current system, that they have to start over again from the beginning. That they can't just delete the mistake and correct it, that they have to re-enter all of the data.
I haven't heard that, and Elizabeth might be able to address that specific but I'm not surprised. The software that most of the filers are using is written in the 1990s, that we don't have. We couldn't fix it if we wanted to. So that's why I guess we have this interim application, but basically just was a second version of what was sitting there. So the things that people expect to be able to do today, which are legitimate things that, like all the points that you make.
And also,
We just don't
it's
have
not
that
just what,
capability.
it's not just what the filers expect to do, but it's what people who are looking at our data expect to be able to get
Right.
out of it. That's becoming an even bigger issue for us. And it is true what you asked Dave. If someone wants to change one figure, they have to re-enter everything, because when you put the one figure in, all the other fields are blank. You have to re-enter the whole
There
thing,
can be that,
basically.
but the long and short, in order, and we see this regularly, the problem is that when you go to file an amendment, for instance, if you want to change one thing and you just send that one thing in, the system overwrites all the old
Everything
data.
else.
So we see that constantly where people make that mistake, and all you'll see is one schedule, or literally one line of data. Now, when you go to save the amendment on the old software, you save a file as an amendment, and then you have to, it's not that necessarily you have to enter all the data again, but it's how you manipulate it to send it that causes the problem. But there's no question,
It has to be
as
included.
John Conklin said, the software is old enough to vote. I mean, it's a long, it's out of date. And
I like
I-
that phrase.
But you know what, I
I
couldn't get Jim O'Donnell to put that in the article, though.
Yeah.
He liked the line, but he wouldn't put it in the article.
Well, I apologize to the commissioners, because I know you all know this. But I just, want to keep saying it for the record, that we have to keep getting this message out, that almost all of the filers are volunteers. The majority of the filers are filing for losing candidates who are performing a public service by running for office. and we don't make this easy for them.
Well, it's very frustrating.
And to me, I'm completely converted to the view that our proper priority is to assist the people who are filing and to encourage voluntary compliance. And that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be doing enforcement for the 1 or 2% who don't pay any attention to the rules. But it's not a simple process now for the several thousand people who volunteer to be treasurers for candidates who volunteer to run for office knowing that they're going to lose.
But also, Commissioner, I mean, there are significant legal consequences for these people, too, for not doing it right. It isn't just a matter of, you make a mistake, and that goes to what you're talking about. Our view, Bill and I have always been in sync on this, is that, we're not out to punish you for making a mistake. You have to make a knowing and willful violation of the election law to violate the election law. But people make mistakes all the time in the way they do things, and that's a huge problem, because there's significant legal consequences. You get sued and you get referred, and people don't realize that. They really don't realize it.
And it goes right through the political spectrum, because you can't go to a political event without a county chairman or a town chairman complaining that people don't want to be treasurers, they want to resign, they get this nasty letter in the mail, they're getting sued. Believe me, there's a lot of roadblocks that people wanted to fulfill that service, and certainly. And the other thing is, in this day and age, even when we first went to electronic filing, there was a skew where the older population were the ones who weren't computer literate. Now pretty much everyone's computer literate, so you don't see that 10 years later. But when people have iPads and they can flick their thumb across the screen and they can do all these things, and our system is based upon 20-year-old technology, people just can't fathom why that is, especially when frankly other agencies, whether it's JCOPE or where you have to do your online filing, they have these data farms, they have web-based filing, all the things that we would love to have, except for the money. And it's not like we haven't asked. We've asked incessantly for the money to do those things, let alone the staffing requirements that we have. But certainly, people have in this day and age an expectation that we can't fulfill, and people expect that we should be able to do that, which is totally unreasonable.
Well, it's only unreasonable because the powers that be won't fund it.
Right. It's not through a lack of...
Well, that's why, and my apologies for prolonging our meeting a few minutes here, but I just think it's worth repeating, to make sure we're all on the same page, because what they're spending on JCOPE could have been spent, in terms of improving the system and providing the resources for real enforcement.
Yep.
And certainly, we're going to do everything we can to cooperate with JCOPE, and hopefully, the result of JCOPE will be...
You mean Moreland.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
The poor ethics people.
No, so, yes, so hopefully the result of the Moreland Commission will be a greater awareness of the need for resources to do what the public is asking here. All right, well, thank you. All right, so that concludes the unit updates.
Good job,
There's no old business. For new business, we have the prima facie determinations related to the independent nominating petitions, which have been distributed. Does anybody want to say anything about them? I guess it's just one determination.
This is a group that came before you last year. He ran as a Democrat. Sorry, Ken. And they submitted a petition to run for trustee of the Long Island Power Authority. There's still the section of the election law as to how many signatures one needs to run for this office. However, as a number of years ago, the statute was amended and they are no longer elected, they're appointed. So we invalidated their petition last year. I think the day after you took that step, there also was the court case that's referenced in this in the paperwork before you. So, they also went to court. But this year they've come back as an independent candidate. It's actually the same, so it's the same recommendation. This is not an elected office. It's appointed, and you can't get on the ballot for an office that doesn't exist. Perhaps next year we can add it to our legislative line and remove this line. It was one of the conversations we had in an omnibus bill that didn't get included, but I think we should on our own just say for our own sanity and not having to face this again next year, maybe we move to repeal this one line and hope the legislature will consider it.
All right, so on the motion to adopt the staff report on prima facie review, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's adopted. We have the regulation, the draft to amend Part 6210 and repeal Part 6211 regarding the central count absentee voting systems.
I'm happy to answer questions if anyone has them. This was discussed somewhat at the last board meeting. We were asked to bring it back to you so that you could direct counsel's office to begin that amendment process. The summary one-page document that's in your board packet articulates the two major changes that we would be making. We had to tweak a definition. We also explained, we added the word precinct-based scanner to the explanation where our regulations require that boards create model voting systems. Clearly, you don't need a model voting system for a central count system. Voters will never encounter it. We are synchronizing the process whereby ballots that can't be scanned are no longer to be remade. They must be hand counted, so that will bring the central count voting process into sync with what happens on election day, so that ought to make canvass teams and candidates and attorneys and others expect the same result from the same sort of issue that might arise in the counting of ballots. There's also, now that the post-election audit is clear to county boards that needs to be conducted, in our old regulations, we had no post-audit election process, so you were required to conduct your pre-election testing pursuant to regulation, but then conduct that pre-election test again when you were done counting ballots to prove that the voting system worked the way it was supposed to. So now we're suggesting that second pre-election testing be eliminated from the processing, and that the post-election audit naturally takes its place, which is consistent with the statute, and again, consistent with the way election day ballots are treated. So we're suggesting that the board consider these recommendations and direct counsel's office begin the process of amending.
And then they'll come back at a point for adoption of a draft in the future.
Right.
So we're not, we're not approving them for publication
No,
yet?
not yet.
They should wait till the next meeting.
Well, the draft still needs work, because it's not in a format that's ready for publication at this point. I mean, I still have some questions regarding some of the issues that are in the draft, but, you know, I don't think they're insurmountable.
Okay, so I guess there's consensus that
Yes.
we'll have council proceed so that we have formal text ready, perhaps for the
We'll
next
leave
meeting.
that on another day.
And I guess it's really the council's working with
Yes.
the election operations here.
You don't need a vote on this.
No.
I think consensus is...
That's just,
All right, so there was a request that we go into executive session to discuss pending litigation.
There's one more discussion on that.
I'm sorry.
There's-
Oh, the 62-6, okay. I don't have
There's
that
not a
draft
draft
here.
in there, it's just,
Okay.
you know, similarly, there is a draft that staff is working on, that, just so you know, it's coming. Similarly, we want to make sure at the draft level that it's accessible. You're on the right path, and that way when council gets it, they're doing the GORE related, put it in the right form, bring it to you for that passage, so that if you have a problem with policy, it goes back to the unit level.
So what are the issues that, why are we amending it?
In general, the regs still provide for the old waiver, you know, how does the county approve waivers that sites don't meet accessibility, but the chapter law 505 of the laws of 2010, I think it's the last chapter that Governor Patterson signed, requires all polling sites by now to be accessible. So what we're doing is taking out that which can't happen anymore, looking to take out that which can't happen, and put in the stuff that we need, which is the timeliness of getting the information for what polling sites do you have, and there's a requirement that we have a copy of the surveys that go with those sites. So we're looking, there've been a number of meetings that PIO and FICTs with them.
Why do we want the surveys?
The statute requires that they give it to us.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it calls for an access survey that we have on file at the county board, but for them to also provide a copy of it to the state board.
Does New York City actually provide the copies of the
Yes.
surveys?
That was a big task that our summer interns put them all in an order and put them in a place, and
Because the district leaders can't get them. So maybe we could provide them to the party district leaders, who are the ones who actually have to recruit the poll workers who...
Yeah.
Which they're falling behind, there's a shortage of poll workers in New York City.
well, hopefully
all
we're
right.
designing a system in a way, and it's our
They
goal
send them to
that
you by email, or
one
you get
place
them
could
by
serve
hard
both
copy?
areas.
I actually get them nowadays, because we had older surveys I know we had hard copies of. More recently, we've been getting DVDs of the surveys themselves are contained on like a Word document, and then there's usually at least one accompanying photograph.
Well, may I tell you, some of the
Very
public
interesting.
schools have quite a large
Well, we're getting to the regulations now.
staircases to get into the school. And they do have an elevator, and they'll always say that the elevator is after you climb the steps for the most part. Because that's restricted entrance mostly for teachers over, and if you have voting going on while school is going on, you're gonna walk up these steps. It's not hard to do. If I got a bad knee and I can do it, but I'm telling you, a lot of people do complain about that the elevator is not accessible. So I'm just throwing it out there and putting it on the table, and that's probably like
Well, I mean,
75 schools, not one.
The law basically stated that all poll sites had to have substantial compliance with the regulations or the accessibility guidelines that we approved here at the board. And the person that would determine that substantial compliance had to be trained, and we work with various partner agencies and organizations throughout the state, and we provided, I think, 13 different training sessions throughout the state, a number of them down in the city, and then throughout all the different sections, which were very well attended. And so It was those people who were then going out and performing the surveys, or training the board staff on how to go out and perform the surveys.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's really just a matter of all boards are supposed to have surveys for all their poll sites, because all their poll sites have to be accessible at this point. They're supposed to have them for public record locally at the board, and they're supposed to provide a copy to us as well.
How do we, I mean, do you keep electronic files of those, or you say they're on disks and you just stick them in a drawer, or?
Well, they're currently, we've worked with IT to develop a system so that it can kind of store them and that you can kind of search by those counties, so that we know that we have a good inventory.
How hard would it be to put that online for the public to access? And I'm really thinking of party district leaders who have to organize the poll workers and poll sites for their districts, that might actually be a resource for them. And if we have the means to put it online and let them access it online, that might be helpful.
Well, we have made it part of the Nysboe system, and so counties, once they've uploaded, and they can use Nysboe to upload their.
Well, the counties can, but
Right.
I'm talking about the.
I mean, it's a lot of information.
If we get to the general, they do their best to comply.
Why don't-
I'm not so sure about the other elections.
Why don't we talk about that?
I
in
think the
session on
custodian-
Yeah.
board?
There you
Yeah.
go.
I just raised it. This is the
Right.
first
Yeah.
I realized that you actually had it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I hear from district leaders all the time complaining about the poll site change procedures and, you know, their difficulties in getting current poll site information.
Well, and I think that's one of our issues that we're looking at as well, because we're trying to make sure that we're getting updated poll site information from the counties as they designate poll sites. I mean, now, as you designate a poll site, it has to be accessible from day one. And we're just trying to make sure that we are getting that information, because we use that information not just for the poll site lookup for voters when they're looking up where to go to vote. And we've been getting a lot more information from New York City as of recent, as far as getting up-to-date poll sites, even when they make changes to them. So that's good, but I think we're just trying to make sure that, you know, before we put information out there, that it is still representative of the latest and greatest.
I just want to say this, I think when it comes to the public schools, which must be 60% of the poll sites in New York City, I think the custodians have to realize that it has to be accessible, because I can tell you, I went around on Tuesday, and I went to 2 schools in Queens, and I went to, I think, 6 schools in Brooklyn, and I would say only half of them was really accessible. The others were not by anybody's fault, but you had to go in. Not anyone's fault, but half of them you really had to walk up big flights of stairs to get into the school, and, you know, before you could vote. Didn't bother me, but I'm sure, you know, it was a good day. Had it been really raining out, maybe my rheumatism would have been hurting. And since many of the voters are senior citizens, I see a concern there. That's all I'm saying. That if they had a sign, elevator entrance, that's all I'm saying. Have it in the same school, but have a sign with you. People don't mind if they walk all the way around the hall to get into the
They're
room.
required to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
part of
yeah.
that, we drafted new.
I didn't see one sign that said room
Well,
school.
bless you,
that
that's the
elevator.
problem with non-compliance.
I mean, we did draft additional like revised training materials that we provide to the boards to provide to their poll workers, so that they would understand what to look for, to make sure that things on election day, like, you know, trash cans don't get in the way of accessibility, or make sure that all the signage is where it needs to be and the doors can be open, things like that.
I can't swear how they pick the rooms or anything where you find, it always seems to be a different one, but often it's the auditorium, but I would say that it's the custodian who has so much to say about this. I think when the machines arrive, they say, put them all in that room, and that's it. You know, I think that somehow the Board of Elections in New York City should know that they have to contact a reliable person who's going to understand that it has to be, you know, very open to the voters to get in and out. Because I didn't see that the other day. I wish I had, but I didn't. I used to do that, you know, go around to all the polls. I don't know if I'm going to be doing it anymore. but it was, you know, and there were some of them that were not really accessible. I mean, enough with signs, plenty of signs, plenty of direction, but the direction often was up this flight of stairs, down this hall, you know. And I saw people turn away. In one school,
There is a federal monitor in New York City now who's responsible for enforcing the court order.
I didn't even know that.
All right, anything else? So the motion, well, let's talk about our next meeting date before we go into executive session.
Was it 30th
I think
our date that we had
We're
put
talking
down?
September 30th, which we need to do because that's the date for setting the ballot.
Yeah.
I mean, we try to make it as late as possible and as early as possible, but the JD,
To judicial convention.
right,
Yeah.
in upstate, they put it in the mail on the 24th, I believe is the Tuesday, right, Ann? And
Excuse me?
The deadline to send us the material is the 24th.
Right.
And then we have to receive it, and people have a chance to object to it, so
And
we're putting it as late as we
And
can.
that's the last day to set the ballot.
And that's the last day to set the
Did we
ballot.
pick the next date by any chance?
Well, that's what, oh, you mean
Yeah.
after, well, so September 30th, and then,
That was the
do you want to pick an October date now?
Yeah, why not? Doesn't that count? You got the calendar.
You have any issues in October, Commissioner O'Connor?
Well, I just don't know when the Moreland Commission
Not on
will
Wednesdays.
grant us
because
the
I-
hearing
There's
information.
registration on Wednesdays now, again. And I have 42 kids in my class.
What date?
How about Tuesday, the 29th?
In October?
Mhm.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Yeah.
That's good.
That good to Jim?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Do we want to pick the December? I mean, would we?
What was the date now?
November is November, depending on what day you pick, but we have to meet on a particular date in December, which is usually close to the 15th, which is on a Sunday.
So, like the 10th of December?
So what is the date again? It's about if we have October?
If we move it too early,
Well, there's
we
no
have
reason
no
to
way
meet in November then.
October 30th.
don't we have to meet by December
And don't we
15th in a
meet December
non-presidential
No,
year?
September 30th.
That's very.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So do we want to do Friday the 13th? If you
God,
don't
no,
know.
please no.
Oh,
That's
sorry,
what we
sorry,
said.
apparently not.
September 30th, or what's next?
Let's not tempt fate.
10th or the 12th?
Is it
December?
Thursday the 12th?
October 29th, Commissioner.
October
Did you get that one?
Oh,
Right.
October 29th.
October-
That's a Tuesday.
September 30th, October 29th.
10/29.
And December
December 12th?
12th, that's the Thursday? Is that
That's a
work?
Thursday.
That's September 29th, right?
September 30th, October 29th.
Okay.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And then that's just to certify the general election.
Okay.